Verbal communication impacts every aspect of your life. Whether you're negotiating for your salary, going viral on social media, finding aligned friendships and relationships, eloquence is everything. But eloquence isn't just about what you say, but it's how it's received on the other end. Eloquence is a combination of your tone, your voice, your presence, your message that all tie in beautifully together. Hi, my name is Jasmine, and on this channel, we talk all about becoming the woman of your dreams and building a life that you absolutely love. Over the years, specifically the last 3 years, I've really built certain habits that really helped me speak more clearly to help me really portray my message in a more impactful way. It wasn't always like this. When I was a kid, I would constantly stutter. And on top of that, I felt immense social anxiety and I felt very afraid to take up space and to be seen. But in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you 10 life-changing habits that made me a more eloquent speaker. I've split these habits into 2 different sets. The first set we're going to be talking about is all about what you can do in your solo time, what you can do to truly practice and to build that toolbox to become more eloquent. The second set of habits are all about what you can do during an actual conversation or during a time where you do require eloquence. This includes the books that I read, the voice that I built over time, and the overall identity that made me a brand new person. So if you want to speak with more confidence, eloquence, and impact, this video was made for you. I've also included chapters for this video, so you can skip around. You can also find the timestamps in the description below. And if you're somebody who's ready to do the real work, I'm not just talking about watching these videos, but actually transforming. I provide in-depth worksheets for every single one of my videos. In these worksheets, I provide in-depth and introspective journaling prompts as well as practical exercises to help you fully remove all of your limiting beliefs and to start building an action plan that can get you living as your highest self immediately. The link to access these worksheets are in the description below. Before we dive into the habits, it's really important to adopt these 3 mindset shifts when you're in this journey of embarking to become more eloquent. The very first mindset shift is eloquence is all about practice. A lot of the times when we meet people that are very articulate and very eloquent, we almost feel like they were born with that skill. But like any skill, like learning how to write, learning how to walk, learning how to salsa, these are all skills that we had improved on over time through practice. Eloquence is purely about being intentional with your words and practice how to articulate them in a clear manner. The second mindset shift is it's not what you say, but it's what people hear. We all have a very unique lens on how we receive information. Because all of us have had very vast and different emotional experiences, the way that we perceive someone else's message can be so different from the next person. So when you're on this journey of speaking more eloquently, you must focus on the audience first. And you must learn how to speak to not just be heard or to just sound smart, and focusing your attention on not just trying to be perceived a certain way, but to really be understood. Eloquence has way more to do with connecting with people and connecting to their soul rather than trying to be perceived a certain way. And the last mindset shift is to focus on authenticity and simplicity. Eloquence is not about being wordy. It's not about adding 16-letter words that no one knows the definition of. It's about being true to who you are. In fact, the more complicated or complex that you make something sound, people don't trust you. But eloquence is about creating the most impact with as little words as possible. Let that sink in for a little bit. Eloquence is also a lot about being true to your values. When you are more rooted in your values, you are more connected to your truth. And people are often very drawn to people who speak their truth out loud. And don't worry about trying to perfect everything you say by not stuttering, by not including some pauses. That sometimes even very eloquent speakers, they stutter. And it's a very human aspect. And even a little stutter can actually enhance your emotional connection with the person you're speaking to. It's very strange how we always feel like we need to always be portrayed as perfect in order to come off in a very respectable way. But what if the humanness of us actually enhances our level of connection, which enhances our eloquence? Eloquent speakers are powerful because they are real. While articulation still matters, authenticity is what makes the most impact. So let's now dive into the 10 habits. So let's first talk about the habits that you can implement to start building up your toolbox to become more eloquent. The very first habit is to start reading your books out loud. Sometimes your mind could be moving at such a fast pace that your body isn't able to follow and articulate what's going on in your mind. When you read out loud and practice the pauses, practice the enunciation, when you practice portraying those words through your mouth, you're actually engaging your physical senses to really adapt to this new tone of voice you're trying to build. Your vocal cords, your tongue, your mouth, and you're really engaging your brain with all of these different parts of your body. By engaging the essential parts that require eloquence, you tend to practice building a better cadence. You build greater confidence. You're able to enunciate and articulate in a better way. So how you can truly embody this and implement this in your routine is to read one page out loud in front of a mirror. Articulation is a muscle memory dance between your mouth and your brain. So how you can really help align the two together is to just practice reading out loud. The second habit is to elevate what you consume. If you want to sound more eloquent, start reading books or listening to podcasts that reflect the version of you that you want to become. If you have a particular podcast where the person speaking is just so incredibly eloquent and you just want to speak like them, the more that you listen to them, the more your subconscious mind absorbs the content and the way they speak, and naturally, very unconsciously, you will start speaking just like them. This tip has dramatically changed my life. When I was traveling for 2 years, sometimes I would go through phases where I didn't have anyone around me. So what I did was I kept listening to my favorite podcasters and I read a lot of books. And this was such a transformational time for me because after traveling, I came back and all of my friends asked how I became so eloquent. The beautiful thing about YouTube videos, books, podcasts is that you get to choose who you look up to. You get to choose what kind of people that you want to become more of. Eloquence in one topic may not necessarily translate in another subject. So for example, I have absolutely no background in science. So if I were to make a science-based video, I would constantly feel that I have nothing to provide. I would feel like I would not be able to give any sort of value, and therefore I may probably not have much to say. But around topics like self-development, becoming the best version of yourself, I could blab all day long about this kind of topic, and that when you are particularly looking for eloquence in a certain topic, it's best to continually listen to those podcasts that talk specifically on that subject. So if you are an investment banker or a consultant, then listening to podcasts about business and finance will help you expand your vocabulary around that subject. So your task here is to curate a list of podcasters that you really look up to and start listening to their podcasts for maybe 1 to 2 hours every single day. The way you sound is purely shaped by all of the different influences in your life and what you've been consuming on a daily basis. The third habit is to journal emotional thoughts to strengthen expressive clarity. The most eloquent speakers are typically the ones that are the most self-aware. And how they became self-aware is through constant journaling. People that are self-aware and want to release those emotions, they take the time to understand what they're feeling by using words. Journaling helps you translate a very abstract feeling into actual words. And when you practice that more enough, you'll be able to have a greater vocabulary around explaining your feelings and emotions. This deepens your ability to speak clearly, especially if you're in situations where you feel slightly more vulnerable or if you're in a conversation that's quite difficult. So as you probably know, I love journaling, and journaling has incredibly changed my life. And initially, I started journaling more because I wanted to articulate my feelings when I'm having difficult conversations with people that I really care about. But when I kept going, journaling, and really analyzing my thoughts and feelings on paper, not only did it impact my personal life and making all of my relationships so much more powerful, but it also impacted the way I interact interact with clients, the way I talk to people in my work, the way I talk to people on YouTube. And it has really impacted not only my personal life, but my professional life as well. Start implementing a journaling routine, and you can just start with these worksheets that I provide. And the more that you allow yourself to express yourself better through words, you will naturally start seeing it reflect in your day-to-day conversations. The fourth habit is practice subtly mimicking the eloquent speakers. Very similar to the habit around listening to as many podcasts and reading as many books as possible, we can also use this as a way to start analyzing someone's body language when they're speaking. TED Talks are really great for this. Watching YouTube videos is really great for this. And by mimicking their tone of voice, mimicking their facial expression, mimicking their body language, these are all very powerful ways that we make our words truly land. And also start stepping outside of your comfort zone and start entering rooms where everyone is eloquent, where everyone is clearly very articulate in their niche, in their space. So when you enter these rooms, start noticing how they portray themselves, how they present themselves. Don't feel intimidated or don't feel like you need to run away, but just analyze. Just be there for educational purposes and start mimicking their body language. When you start mimicking these people and giving yourself more permission to speak with more eloquence, to speak with more confidence, you will naturally align your subconscious mind to start acting like that on autopilot. So one thing you could do is implement something that I like to call shadowing. Shadowing is when you watch a clip of someone, a speaker, or someone that you highly admire, and then give yourself 30 seconds to act as if you were that person. Study not only the words that they speak, but their body language, their expression, their hand gestures. If you want to learn more about becoming the most charismatic version of yourself, I actually made a video called A Shy Introvert's Guide to Feminine Charisma. In that video, I talk a lot about what kind of body language to implement, as well as things to really bring in your presence without needing to constantly need to have something to say. The last habit is to focus on a topic that you're genuinely passionate about. If you've never felt eloquent before, or you always felt like you had a huge stuttering problem, maybe it's because the topics that you're engaging in don't really interest you that much. When I'm in conversations where I don't really know much about the topic, or I don't even care for the topic, it's really hard for me to think of things to say. So eloquence could really come with talking about things that you care about. So what I would do is I would start with a topic that I really care about, and I would even go as far as starting to make YouTube videos about them. YouTube is a seemingly very scary platform to share your presence to, especially because you're speaking to a bunch of strangers and you're essentially talking to either the void or a bunch of people that might criticize you. But I have found that ever since I started YouTube, I became so much more articulate, and I've been a better speaker overall, not only in my personal life, but also in my business life as well. And it's because I'm talking about a topic that I really care about, which is self-development. And the more I give myself permission to speak about this topic, the more I practice articulating my thoughts and putting these thoughts to the world. When you talk about topics that you genuinely love and care about, people not only hear it in your voice, but they see it in your eyes too. So honor your genre-specific eloquence. You might be eloquent in psychology, but not eloquent in politics. Just grow in one lane first, and you'll automatically see that the skills and the articulation that you learn in one area will naturally bleed in other areas as well. Now let's move on to the next 5 habits. And these are the habits that you can start embodying and implementing in real time. The first habit is to ask thoughtful questions. Now, why does this even matter? Eloquence is really about understanding the audience. So before you go into a speech, you want to think about who is your audience? What do they want to hear from you? What do they need? How can you uplift them during this process? But when you don't know the immediate audience and you're just talking to a stranger, for example, asking thoughtful questions can help you understand the other person better. Eloquent people don't just focus on talking. They focus on listening and understanding who they're talking to. It's about how deeply you make other people feel truly seen. And the most powerful way you can do this is to ask thoughtful questions. When you have have a really good question, not only do you elevate the conversation, but you also enable the other person to really lean in and engage and connect with you. Here are some ways that you can start implementing more thoughtful questions in your conversations. The first thing is that you can ask questions that reveal someone's values rather than facts about their life. For example, instead of asking, "What do you do for work?" you can say, "What have you been doing that has been exciting you the most?" The second thing is to ask questions that are curiosity specific. People naturally feel more engaged when you're asking questions like, "You mentioned you moved recently. How did that emotionally make you feel?" When you're asking questions like this, it shows that you want to engage on a deeper level, and it also shows people that you're processing what they're saying. And the third thing is to shift your identity from a speaker to a facilitator. Now, this only applies in conversations specifically, but instead of always trying to come up with stories to talk about, things to say, just as simple as engaging in thoughtful questions can be enough to open someone and to allow someone to trust you. The second habit is to start anchoring your voice. If there's one shift that instantly changes the way someone perceives you, it is speaking in a lower tone range and adding more conscious pauses. Speaking in a lower tone range doesn't necessarily mean that you're trying to come off a certain way, but really it's actually for you. When you speak in a lower tone range, you're less anxious, and instead, your voice and the words that you speak land with more impact. And speaking a lower tone range actually helps you articulate better and helps you slow down in your words. You also want to think of this in your audience's shoes as well. If you speak in a slow, calm, collected manner, they are more able to process what you're saying. And on top of that, they trust what you're saying because you sound like you know what you're talking about. You sound assertive. When people speak quickly and with a high-pitched tone, it often comes from a subconscious belief that they don't believe they deserve to be seen and heard. It almost sounds like an apology for taking up space. But when you slow down, it unconsciously communicates to the other person that you belong here. You deserve to be heard. What you're saying is important. So when you're having difficult conversations or when you're in a negotiation, it's important that you sound sure of yourself. You are portraying yourself as someone that belongs in this conversation. What you say actually matters. If you have ever struggled with stuttering, or if you are struggling with this right now, I want you to shift your mindset to see that stuttering is not because there's something wrong with you, but it's because of cognitive overload. Just think about that. It comes from this nervous tension. It comes with feeling like there's so many thoughts in your mind that you want to share. So it's completely okay to just start slowing down and just allowing yourself to process the words that you're about to speak. When you have a steady pace and a steady tone, you come off as someone that people can trust. How you can start embodying this is to start speaking from the out breath, not the in breath, not when your breath is all the way at the top. Start speaking from your diaphragm as well to really create that extra oomph when you're sharing your voice. Insert micro pauses in between ideas, and especially if you have this unconscious fear of taking up space, it's going to initially feel uncomfortable. But as you keep practicing and as you keep creating these intentional pauses, they will feel more natural. The third habit is to use hand gestures to really add impact in your words. Body language is everything when it comes to eloquence, and people may hear your voice, but unconsciously, they're also absorbing the way that you deliver that message through your body. You will find that most, if not all, TED Talks, everyone up there speaking on stage are using their hands to express their message. It may initially seem weird if you're not used to using hand gestures, but even speaking about a story, like if you're storytelling in a conversation, using hand gestures can help you add that extra impact in the words that you're speaking. So for example, if I just hid my hands behind my back and I just talked like this, it doesn't seem as engaging. And in fact, you're wondering, where are your hands? And it's very psychological the way that our hands can welcome in warmth. When you start using your hands, even in everyday language, your message becomes more sticky. Not all hand gestures or body language is made the same. So for example, if you're constantly fidgeting because you're nervous, if you keep tapping on your foot, these are not positive body language. So start being more consciously aware of how you are using your hands, how you are using your body when you're talking to somebody. The fourth habit is to start using simple everyday words. Simple words are so underrated because we assume that simple words, they don't sound that smart, so why should we even bother saying it when we're trying to impress somebody? Think about it this way. Simple words are more easily understood, so they reach people faster and on a deeper level. And that's the goal. The goal isn't trying to get somebody to completely dissect and ask ChatGPT what we're saying, but how can we make our message as short, succinct, but also as impactful and emotional as possible? Remember, eloquence is about being felt and understood. Simplicity matters because complex words can actually create a distance between you and your audience. But when you use simpler language, it acts as an invitation that you are also welcoming them in your space. So I want you to walk away with this one reframe. The most beautiful words are the ones that feel like they already belong to you. Think about powerful speakers that use very simple words. For example, Michelle Obama, Oprah Winfrey, Brené Brown. They don't try to complicate their message, but in fact, they're very intentional around using simple language to get their message across. The fifth habit is to use descriptive language, metaphors, and visual imagery. The human brain processes images 60 times faster than words. When you paint pictures with your words, they see and feel and remember what you say. This particularly pertains to storytelling, like when you're making YouTube videos, for example, or when you're doing a speech, or when you're telling somebody a very fascinating story about your travels. Using metaphors and similes is a really powerful way to communicate your emotions in simplicity. What it does is that it takes abstract ideas and puts them into understandable terms. What you can do is you can start frames with, it's kind of like, or picture this, or imagine if. Do you see how immediately when I start my sentences with picture this or imagine this, you suddenly create a whiteboard in your brain. You're like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to draw what you're about to share. And it enables people to really visualize your words and it creates art. Now we've reached the end of this video. Thank you so much for tuning in all the way to the end. The power of eloquence, and when you master eloquence, can completely change your life, and it could really help impact your relationships and your ability to impact the world. Don't be intimidated by eloquent people because the only difference between you and them is that they embody habits that you have not done yet. So by embodying these 10 habits, you will for sure become incredibly eloquent. If you are currently on the journey of becoming a high-value woman, I make videos specifically on this topic, and I talk about relationships, about career, about building greater self-worth. And if you want to dive deeper into the tools and mindsets that I've shared in this video, you can check out my worksheet down below, and I've received so many positive comments about these worksheets, so I'm sure they'll help you too. Thank you so much for being here. I love and appreciate you, and I'll see you next week. Bye!